future finally starting to look bright, or is it going to be another long year next year for Philadelphia?
Yeah, well, I think you could say that the future looks bright, and certainly there are some things you could get excited about, but I don't think next year is going to be all that much different than this year. Certainly you've got to be encouraged by the way Nerlens Noel played down the stretch, in the second half. You kind of saw the player that they thought he was going to be. I think you hope that you see the same thing for Joel Embiid next year. That you're probably going to have a slow start, but if he can finish strong and show you why they were so high on him to begin with, then you've got to be fairly excited. A lot of it's going to depend on the lottery next month. What happens with that Lakers pick, which could be number 6 at best. So that's going to be something that you'll have to keep an eye on, and there's a couple other picks involved. So there's still a lot more question marks than there are answers. So like I say, I think next year is going to look a lot like this year, although you may see some things that at least make you think, okay, well, here's something I can be excited about going forward.
Sean, they traded Michael Carter-Williams, and some people weren't sure if Brett Brown was on board with that or not. Sam Hinkie obviously is very tough to nail down and see what the positioning on everything is. But is there some rift between those two? Or do you think that Brett Brown is starting to get frustrated, or is he 100% on board with all of this?
Well, there's certainly been talk that that's the case. People I've talked to have said no, that that when Brett took this job, he knew what he was getting into, and he knew that he wanted a 4-year contract because it was going to take at least that much time for them to turn the corner. Now, I think Brett Brown, does have some concerns in terms of where does this leave him if after 4 years his contract is up and they go in a different direction, and he's sitting there, with the record of 80 and 200. It's not going to look very good if he wants to find another job. But at this point, though, I think Brett Brown is still on board. He was not. It was not have been his first choice to trade Michael Carter-Williams, but he understands that it's part of Sam Hinkie's master plan here.
Sean, obviously, this Sixers team, you mentioned Nerlens Noel and Joel Embiid. What are some of the other assets that they might have moving forward? Is it more just picks, or do they have some players on this team that other teams may value?
Yeah, it's mostly the picks and Dario Saric in Europe. I don't think there's a whole lot on the roster now that teams are knocking themselves out for. Tony Roten would maybe be on that list, but in general, no. I mean, it's the picks, and don't get me wrong, they have a ton of picks, and those are very, very valuable. And if they get into a position, within the next year where the right young star player comes available, I don't know who that would be, but if there is a position where they feel like they're ready to turn the corner, nobody's going to be better positioned to do that in terms of the young talent that they have and the picks that they have. So, that's sort of the silver lining there. But as far as players on the roster, there's really not a whole lot there that teams are knocking themselves out to get.
Sean, the draft, obviously, as you mentioned, they could land 4 picks in the first round here, and it's a pretty deep draft, so that could help them out. But they could only end up with 1 pick in the draft. If this team was in the number 1 spot, is it a smart move for them to take one of the big men, considering they have Joel Embiid and Nerlens Noel?
Yeah, I think they will pick for talent and not for need. I think that given where the franchise is, I think they know they've got to do that. But certainly, yeah, if they wind up with that number 1 pick, especially if you don't have anything else, they'll have some decisions to make, because there are a couple of decent players on the wing who you might consider in that spot. D'Angelo Russell from Ohio State, Emmanuel Muide, who has been playing in China, the kid who was supposed to go to SMU. He would be a consideration. Maybe Stanley Johnson from Arizona you'd have to think about. But, yeah, there's no question that Karl Anthony Towns and Jahlil Okafor are the class of this draft. And so if you wind up with not even the first pick, but I would say even one of the first 2, you probably got to go with one of those guys, even if you're the Sixers and you've got the big guys that you already have on the roster.
Sean, last year they were in a similar spot where obviously they were not trying to win very many games. They ended up with the third pick in the draft and ended up with Embiid, maybe who might be the best player in that draft. We don't know. What if they fall into the similar spot and similar situation this year and get the third pick? What makes the most sense then?
I think you'd have to look at. Obviously, it depends on what the first two teams do. But if they go with the big guys, then I think you'd have to look at the next available talent. I think it's D'Angelo Russell. Just talking to the scouts that I've heard from, a 6'5" guard who can play off the ball or on the ball. He can be your point guard. He can be your shooting guard. That kind of versatility this day and age is really highly prized, highly valuable. So, to me, that would be the guy you'd have to go for. Again, the Sixers, they have a unique way of looking at things, and I could talk to 29 scouts and 29 general managers, and they might all say this is what they should do with the third pick. That doesn't mean that's what the Sixers are going to do. So, that is what I would say they should do, but I'm not sure that, like I say, that's what they will do.
Sean Deveny with Sporting News is, of course, we're looking at the Sixers moving forward. The draft outlook for them, they could get 4 picks, they could have 1, but do you envision them being a player shopping in free agency this offseason?
I really don't. I think that, they'll be in much the same situation as they were last year where they basically had to make some moves just to hit the floor, just to hit that bottom rung and have a legal, in terms of the collective bargaining agreement, hit the league minimum. That's probably where they're going to be again. I don't think they want to commit to any long-term deals. I think they're fine with, okay, we'll be bad again. We'll let our young guys develop. And then we'll make the next step when it's time to do that. And I think when you step back, the thing that and when you talk to anybody who's been around the league long enough, the one thing that you worry about with this team, any team that kind of gets into that mode of grinding, losing, that they can't get out of it. That no matter how much talent you collect, you've become so accustomed to losing that it's hard to break out of that. And just when you talk to coaches or former players, there's been that experience elsewhere in the league. So I think that's probably the big danger that they run by not going for free agents who can help them win in the short term and teach some of the young guys and help them along. They had Luke Mbah-a-Moute this year, who's pretty good with that as far as being a veteran in the locker room. I think they might need more of that, but again, I don't know that they necessarily see it that way.
Sean, a lot of talk about tanking in the NBA, and obviously people looking at the Sixers and the Knicks, and, is the NBA looking at these things? Do they like what they see here? I mean, there could be a game on Monday night between the Sixers and the Heat where both teams might be trying to lose that game on purpose because it could really change. I mean, the Heat, if they win, they could potentially lose that draft choice, and if the Sixers, depending on where they stand on that night, that could really make a mockery of a game like that. Is that something that the NBA is worried about, or other teams going to model what the Sixers have done?
Yeah, and I'll say that when the league tried to pass some changes before the season started last October, it was this sort of thing that they were trying to address. And I think Adam Silver really thought that he had those votes to get that passed, and that we would have some changes in the lottery this year. I think he was a little surprised to find that he didn't. So I think that as things play out this year, as they head into the Board of Governors meeting, which will be next week, I think that you'll see some of these things brought up again, and maybe at this time next year there will be a change in those rules. I think that a lot of the older owners, especially, were a little wary of making changes to those rules. But I think now that you see the way that some of this stuff is played out, I think people will be a little more open to it, and maybe they'll get some lottery changes passed. But you're right. It's not a situation that's good for the league if you're playing a game, even if it's at the end of the year here in April, where each team really, it would be better for the franchise if each team loses. You don't want to see that, and so if you have some tools at your disposal in terms of the rules that you can maybe change a little bit, I think you've got to do it. I think Adam Silver knows that.
So when is it Sixer fans can come out of hibernation? Is it 17, 18, 19? When are we thinking?
Maybe 20. I don't know. No. I think probably, after next year, you've got to start turning the corner. Like I say, you have enough things going on in terms of the losing becoming embedded, in terms of the coaching staff, and how long you can keep them going, in terms of how long you can ask the fan base to be patient. I would say that next summer, they've got to be a little more aggressive in terms of team building and being a team that is trying to win, trying to make the playoffs, and not just constantly pushing that rebuilding a little further and further and further. 19
wins for a team, not too bad actually, with a team full of guys you never heard of before, and you're watching Nerlens Noel. It'll be interesting to see him and Embiid together. And Sean Deveney from the Sporting News with more on the Sixers. Head over to sportingnews.com. Great piece on their offseason. Sean, thanks so much.
Okay, thanks for having me.
You got it.